welcome to your episode of Esteem TV. I'm your host, Naisha Thompson, and I'm excited that you are here with me today. Listen, today's episode is awesome. It's amazing because today's episode includes my family. That's right. I got my family on board. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about It's a Family Affair, bridging the generational gap. So buckle your seatbelt, stay locked, make sure you are taking notes because some of you out there might be experiencing what we're going to talk about today on today's episode. All right, so let's get started. Like I always say, let me open up with a prayer like I do in every episode. So Father, we thank you for this opportunity that you've given us to come together to glorify your name. I pray that something is said today that would touch somebody's heart, that would minister to someone. I ask that you would have your way. Use us as vessels in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Hi, ladies. I'm so excited. Okay, so if you guys don't know who I have with me today, we're going to start off with my sister to my right. This is my sister-in-law, Tiffany, my beautiful sister-in-law. This is my sister, Cynthia. And then this is my mom, the doctor and pastor, Valerie Crumpton.
Praise
Say
the
hello.
Lord. Praise the Lord.
Oh my goodness. So I'm so excited that they are here with me today, and we're going to be talking about, like I said, bridging the generational gap. But I want to start off by asking actually, how many kids do you all have? Well, you know how many kids you have, but how many kids do y'all have? And give me, first, let me say this. There are 3 generations, sorry, Tiffany, represented at this table. I said that because my sister-in-law is in denial of her generation. So you've got baby boomers to my left. The Generation Xers are represented here in the middle, and the awesome millennials is represented over here to my right. So you've got 3 generations represented at the table tonight. However, they have kids who represent other generations. So Tiffany, how many kids do you have and what are their ages?
I have 4 children.
4 kids.
The oldest one being 21,
Wow.
19, 17, and 10.
So we're talking Generation Z, X, and Generation Y and Z. Generation Y and Z, is that correct?
Well, I'm a millennial.
Mm-hmm. I'm an Xer. Right, yes.
What?
Y and Z. We're talking Generation Y and Z. And Cynthia, how many kids do you have?
I have 2 daughters. They are ages 19 and 17.
Wow. And Mom?
Well, I have one by birth. I have a stepson, and then I have 2 other girls. So I have 3 girls and 1 boy. And I have 8 grandchildren and 1 great-granddaughter and another great-grandchild on the way.
Okay. We already talked about your grandchildren
today because the Cowboys lost. I'm so sorry I had to throw
This is not about the Cowboys.
This
This
is a
is
generation
no.
struggle.
No.
I need to back up because my children have aged since.
And so let me reel my family back in.
Wait, I gave the wrong ages on my children. They're 20 and 18.
Okay. All right, 20 and 18. So how old are your children, not your grandchildren? They've already talked about your grandchildren.
Okay,
How old are
let's see.
your children?
Easy.
52.
Raise them.
Charles Jr. is 47.
Mm-hmm.
And Naisha is 40.
Don't you do it. There you go.
Well, then Junior is 46.
Okay.
And Tiffany is 41.
So you see, our family is mixed up. We are like all over the place. So many generations
And
represented.
I am 66.
Okay. All right. You are 66.
You needed to know that.
You look awesome.
Thank you.
We look like sisters.
Thank you.
Okay.
I look like part of the sisterhood.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So, as you all can see, there are many generations represented here. So, I'm sure it's some mother out there watching us like, what do I do with my crazy kids? We are just not on the same page. We don't look at things the same. We look at things from different perspectives, so on and so forth. So, we just wanted to have that conversation here today, right here at this table, right on Esteem TV. So, I want to start by asking, what are some things that you all think about when you think about generational gaps? I'll start by saying music. Definitely music separates us.
Absolutely.
The style of music is completely different from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any ideas?
Technology
Technology
and
and social media.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a major one right there. Tiffany, you have any more ideas?
Going outside.
Because what? Kids don't go outside. They don't go outside.
Right.
I remember, listen, getting on my big wheel. You know, I used to go outside, get on my big wheel, play in the grass. The grass was my food, you know. I acted like, you know, I was cooking and things like that. These kids don't know anything about going outside, about playing with other kids in person, because they're sitting somewhere behind their computers, talking to each other through technology, right? And Mom, what would you say, because you're you represent the baby boomers, so think about something. Language, and something else just came to mind.
What?
Wardrobe. Definitely wardrobe, because when I think about your generation, what was popular? Bell bottoms.
Well, they're back.
Yes, they are.
They're back.
They
We
are.
wear them now.
They are, but we didn't start wearing them. Like, we
No.
had to come back around to them.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
Because
so-
there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
So everything makes a turn, makes a circle.
Right.
And although you didn't see it when I was doing it, you're doing it now, and I can tell you about how it was then.
Exactly.
And then you can relate. But
Exactly.
I think one of the major generational gap issues is language. Because you guys take the same words and redefine them
Absolutely.
to mean something else, and that's every generation. The word doesn't change, just the meaning. So, yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. I say that was bad. Bad. I mean, it was bad. To me, that means good. But then when I say that to either of your generations, well, the three of us grew up together. The truth is, the three of us grew up together. But when I say it to maybe Tiffany's generation, they'll say, "You mean, what does bad mean? You don't like it?"
Like, no, I love it.
No, I love it. That's why it's bad. Because it was, you know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's that language barrier there
Yeah.
when you cross generations.
Right.
Absolutely.
Wow. So
And-
what? Yes.
I would piggyback on what you were saying about wardrobe. I would even say, like, to job interviews. See, we were taught to dress up and
Right.
have on a nice business suit or some slacks or
Right.
something. These kids, they will wear a hoodie and some jeans, and t-shirt and
Right.
some shorts, and I'm like, you going to your interview like that? And he was, yes, everybody is. And so we would have this back and forth, and they say, "Mommy, please don't make me wear a suit. I'm going to look like a dork." And so I would take them to the interview, and sure enough, the other young people that would be coming in were dressed similarly to them. So there's been a transformation of even the basic acceptance, what's accepted and what's not for wardrobe. So I think that's very interesting.
Wow.
What's really interesting about that, Cynthia, was Tiffany and I were talking on the way over here. And she just went through a job interview a couple days ago. And the doctor that she interviewed, one of them, complimented her. Tell them what you had on.
Yeah, well, I was dressed just like that. I had on a suit. I had on my black blazer, my black skirt. I went with, my portfolio and my resume in hand.
That's the way we were taught.
That was taught to us when we were in high school. As a matter of fact. We had a whole separate class teaching us how to be professional. Go on your interview. Don't wear a whole bunch of perfume. Just the do's and don'ts. So when I try to tell my children now, hey, make sure you iron your shirt, make sure it's tucked in, and they're kind of like, that's not a big deal, Mom. Like nobody goes to an interview like that. Like, that's just doing too much. So they just don't get it.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. This is interesting, right? Because do you think that is what causes gaps, is the fact that, okay, let me start over. The fact that your daughter or the generation that your kids come from, they do things differently. They just do. And they don't see anything wrong with it. But from where we come from, we look at what they do as wrong.
Right.
Is that what causes the gap between generations? Is our perspective about the way we do things?
I think that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is it fair for us to say that another generation is going about it all wrong when it's their generation?
I wouldn't say it's wrong. Maybe a little misguided because it comes from a place where we were taught the same thing. We saw the same thing. The generation before us was like, that's wrong. That's not how you do it. And so we're kind of just carrying on the pattern of what we saw.
Correct.
But it's not really fair, I would say.
Mom, what would
what's
you say?
interesting about that is what amazes me is our kids grow up in the house with us, thinking that they will mirror what they've been taught at home. But it's something about the streets. There's something about school. There's something about
peer pressure,
community that makes them become something different than what they're taught at home. They're at home. Well, no, they're not at home as much as they're out in the streets nowadays. Yeah. So they attract to what they see outside the house, and we all did it. We all did it. Every generation. You're more interested in what happened outside the house than what happened in the house.
Because in a sense, you look at home as a prison when it's really not.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Children learn from other children.
From other children.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Wow, this is really an awesome conversation tonight. So do you think that it's possible that generational gaps can be closed? I mean, this is a conversation that has been going on for generations. Is it possible that we can close generational gaps? What would you say?
I don't know if it's possible to necessarily close the gap. It's more geared toward bridging the gap.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So bridging, if you could visualize an actual bridge, it's basically a pathway, a connector from one place to the other. And so to close that would be like to disconnect or disassociate, which I don't think is wise, because there are good things that each generation offers.
I love that.
So to build a bridge from one generation to the next, I think is a better approach.
And I think that you said something real key there. There are good things that each generation offers.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's difficult for us, generations that come before the next generation.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's difficult for us to grasp that. I will say personally, being 45, I feel like I'm starting to sound like my mother. At my age, because now I'm looking at the generations under me like these young people, I never thought I would see the day when I was calling somebody else young people, because I used to be the young person in the room. But now I can relate to some of the things that I learned from the generation before me, which means that each generation certainly has something to offer. The generation that goes before you has wisdom. The generation that comes after you has youth and energy and strength. Even the Bible talks about that, right? And so, Mom, what would you say to that?
Excuse me. I, as you were talking, Naisha, I thought about how the two of you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
You really never grew up with anyone younger than you.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody around you was always older.
Correct.
And they took to you like, I can't explain it.
Mm-hmm.
But she never had anyone younger than her showing her the way. Or if they came to latch on to her.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't, excuse me, she didn't
Drink your water if you need to.
She didn't care to be with younger people.
This is the truth.
She's telling on me, guys.
Yeah, I'm really trying to tell on her.
So, in a sense, she
Yeah.
wasn't really as subject to peer pressure from her generation because she wasn't with them.
She
was
wasn't
with
with
us.
them.
That's correct. That's
So
true.
she had a different outlook.
Yeah.
You know, some would say she had an old soul or whatever, you know, to say, but she at an early age was drawn to older people.
Yeah.
And so even though she was not in our generation, she took on some of the attributes of our generation because she was with us, and that's how she grew up.
That's
That's how
correct.
she grew up.
That's correct. Wow.
You can sit with us.
Okay.
You can sit with us, girl.
All right.
She was the youngest thing in the choir. She was.
We know Gen X is
listen.
wonderful.
That is always what happens when you bring your mom on set with you.
Yeah.
She's always going to tell on you. So, but she is correct. I did grow up with, I love being around older people for whatever reason. I just did. I don't know why, but hey, I am excited about and privileged to say that I was able to grow up that way.
I want to go back to what Cynthia said about the bridge, because the oldest person in our church is 103.
Mm-hmm.
And people latch on to her, connect to her, because she has lived through 2 pandemics.
Mm-hmm.
She has lived through a century of issues and hurts and ups and downs. And so to talk about a bridge, she still sits in the service. And because of just her presence being, she still walks in, she still talks, she prays, she has a online going through the Bible, a year going through the Bible. I'm in this book now. If you want to catch up with me, I'm here. She has a Facebook page.
She's on Facebook.
All right,
Okay. Mother is still active at 103, which helps us through the bridge to be able to see what she did, we can do. What we're doing, you can do. So that bridge helps those generations coming after us to continue on and not want to give up, because the struggle is real, but so is the victory.
That's good.
So is the victory.
That's good.
That you can make it through life because life continues. Life is not going to stop.
Right.
Right? And so Mother has taught us at 103 that you can live through it.
That's right.
And that you can have the victory in this life. She's still living. She's still being a testimony.
Right.
And that's that bridge. And the bridge is not just let me pass the baton, but let me walk with you. Let me walk with you. Because if you let me walk with you, I can pretty much show you the way. If you trust me enough, I can share my testimony, I can share my struggle, and then I can share my victory.
What you just said is key. If you trust me enough,
If you trust me.
that has become a problem.
Yes.
With some of the younger generations because there's a lack of trust. My kids will say to me all the time, I've heard it over and over through the years, Mom, what worked for y'all doesn't work for us. Or what applied to you guys doesn't apply to us. So they're speaking from their place
Yeah.
of truth.
Mhm.
But to me, I hear, I don't trust what you're telling me.
Right.
And
correct.
so we need to, and I'm sure you've been a victim of it with us.
Mhm.
You would try to tell us different things
Absolutely.
and tell us to turn right and look out the window and see us pull out and go left
Mhm.
as quick as you told us to. And so each generation has to struggle with that.
Mhm.
I don't want the rejection, the
Mhm.
feeling that my kids don't trust what I'm telling them, and they don't want to constantly hear from us that
Right.
you're making the wrong decision. You're making
Right.
the wrong decision. So finding a way to grapple with that is important too, as we try to move forward and try to figure out how to bring these generations together.
That's good. And
Can I say one more thing to
Sure,
that?
sure.
Because I'm close to Cynthia's oldest girl, and she'll call me and we'll talk about things. So although she may not trust that in between me and her, our children have a way of finding trust in the bridge.
Mm.
And maybe not
Talk
the
more
parent.
about that. Talk more about that.
Maybe not the parent, but they can find that in the grandparent. And they'll tell us things that they won't tell you.
Mhm.
And then sometimes the grandparent has to be a liaison between, because I've had to do that, be a liaison between the parent and the child.
As my
Where I
child
have
said,
to and have to negotiate the relationships between the parents and the child.
And the auntie.
So there's always this bridge. Yes, grandparents bring peace when there's a struggle. Grandparents sometimes stand in between. Parents get mad, but it's okay.
she said that too hard.
They do get mad, but it's okay.
I feel attacked.
I did it. Don't feel attacked.
I'm playing.
It's
You
the
good.
truth.
It's the truth.
Yeah,
It's the
it
truth.
is very true.
They'll
yeah.
call and they'll reach out to the grandparents for help.
When you
What?
said finding trust in the bridge, I got chills. That'll preach.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you got to trust the bridge.
But I want to ask this: what can we do to create that trust? Because there's a reason why, there's a lack of trust there.
Active listening.
That's
Active
the biggest
That's the
issue.
key. That's the key.
Active listening.
Having conversations,
Yeah.
being open and letting your children know that I appreciate your point of view.
Exactly.
Because
I'm
I mean,
listening
you
to
can.
I'm
I've
listening.
learned from my children as far as like technology goes. I feel like they're like much more advanced. than we
Right.
are.
Absolutely.
At their age,
Absolutely.
I didn't have the internet. And
Right.
writing
Right.
book reports, I had to look into the encyclopedia. So
Right.
I feel like just having open conversation, open dialogue,
Yeah.
and I feel like that builds trust.
It does. It does.
Wow.
And I think you're good at having that open conversation with your kids and allowing them to express their emotions.
I think that speaks of her generation.
Absolutely.
Because she's a
I
millennial.
see. I see.
Now,
Is that
if
what
we
that is?
are referring to baby boomers,
Oh, bless the Lord.
okay,
You couldn't express nothing.
we
You
couldn't
express
express
under your breath.
anything. We would get expressed into next week.
And back.
And so that itself speaks to that
Generation,
generational difference
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
if you would.
See, that's
So-
my kids tried to integrate me into that, and I was not receptive at the beginning. Because I can recall Kylie being really small, crying her eyes out. You won't let me say what I gotta say.
Yes.
Can you just let
This
me
is
say
true.
what I wanna
This
say?
is true.
And I grew up like, no,
You can't.
you don't say anything.
Yeah.
And so there is something to be said for letting them
Express
vent, letting them
themselves.
say what they have to say.
Absolutely.
And getting it out. And like you said, her generation is much more receptive to that.
It is.
It started later for me
Yeah.
as they got older. I began to be more, okay, what do you want to say, baby?
Right.
But
Right.
it took me a while to get there because that I was conditioned the other direction.
And what it created between us three is a fight because we were taught that your children don't say what they want to say.
Right.
So then
Correct.
what happened was then they became defiant at certain times in our relationship because they wanted to get it out. And they were
Correct.
determined to say what they wanted to say. But that's because I grew up where you didn't say what you wanted to say.
Now that takes me into a whole nother conversation, because think about it. We are from Generation X. Generation X, in my opinion, and for you that are listening, we have gone silent.
You think so?
You don't hear a
kinda see
lot.
that.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot about Generation X. When millennials were up and coming, that's all you heard.
Yeah, that's
millennials,
true.
millennials.
That's true.
Because millennials had more of a freedom
Yeah.
to express themselves. They were growing up in this age of technology and social media and all of these things. But us from Generation X, we had baby boomer parents who wouldn't allow us the freedom to express ourselves.
That is so
And so now as we are, coming of age and we have become adults, I feel like as a generation, we kind of have taken the backseat.
Some of us.
Some of us
are kind
of course, there are
walking,
still
straddling the fence between. It's like a tug of war between the millennials and the baby boomers on who's going to get us.
Right. As a whole, though, you don't really hear a lot about our generation right now.
That's true.
Yes, and so I think I understand. How allowing your children to be heard can impact them in a positive way, but at the same time, you don't just let them say whatever they want to say.
Right.
They still have to be respectful to you, so there's that balance.
Right.
But as we wrap up this episode, because man, we've really had a good conversation today. I'm sure somebody can relate to us. I think I just want to go back and revisit what we said about bridging the gap. What are some ways we can bridge generational gaps? One of them was active listening. By actively listening to the generation that's before us and even after us. What are some other ways do you all think that we can bridge generational gaps?
So I want to say this. My administrative assistant is 44. I tell her, don't leave me out. Don't leave me out. Because in the workforce, the age dynamic
is real.
Is changing.
It has shifted.
It has shifted. So when there's new language, new technology, I said, don't leave me out. And one thing I appreciate God for, my daughters have treated me as if I were their age. They don't leave me out. They say some things that make me turn red.
Which is not hard to do.
However, they don't leave me out. So I would highly recommend for the baby boomers and even for your generation and those that are after you, don't be left out of the conversation. And don't be so defiant about the conversation that you don't want to hear it.
Right.
Because when you shut down, life shuts down for you. So stay open. Stay in the conversation, and you'll continue to live.
I call it lifelong learning.
Lifelong.
Don't close yourself off to where you are.
Remain open-minded.
Open to receiving new technology, new thought, new direction. Because the millennials and the Gen Y and those coming behind them, they're progressive in their thinking. And so, not to say that the previous generations aren't, but there's something to be said about their willingness to learn, to move, to change, to adapt, whereas a lot of us in the prior generations could tend to be a bit stagnant in our learning and our development. So just be a progressive and continuous lifelong learner. And like she said, don't be left behind.
Right.
And, I think we'll get there together.
Awesome. Wow, this has been an awesome episode. Thank you, family, for joining me tonight. And so, once again, thank you all out there in Esteem TV land.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching us. Until next time, make sure you follow me at www.mynewesteem.org for updates about what we are doing with the Esteem Women's Organization. All right, bye-bye for now.
Pray for the Cowboys. Bye.